here is something that sounds almost impossible. The fast itself might be the easy part. The hard part comes in the 20 minutes right after. That is the moment you sit down and finally eat. Your body has been running clean and quiet for hours. Then food arrives, and in that window, your body is unusually sensitive. What you put in your mouth does not just get digested, it gets amplified. The same plate that would barely register at 2 in the afternoon can, on an empty tank, set off hours of low-grade inflammation. So the real question is not whether you should fast. The question almost nobody asks is simpler and stranger. What exactly do you break it with? And here is my promise to you. Once you understand why the answer is about combinations, you will never look at that first meal the same way. Not single foods, specific pairings. 2 meals with identical calories and identical protein can produce completely different inflammatory responses in your blood afterward. Same calories, same numbers on paper, wildly different biology inside you. That gap is where all the interesting science lives, and I want to walk you through it. Let me explain what is actually happening in there, because the mechanism is genuinely one of the more surprising things in modern nutrition research. First, something a little uncomfortable about eating in general. Every single meal you eat, even a good one, creates a small inflammatory response in your body. Researchers call this postprandial inflammation. That word just means inflammation after a meal. For a few hours, certain markers in your blood quietly rise. Markers like interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha. Those are chemical text messages your immune cells send each other saying something is happening here, everybody pay attention. Oxidative stress rises too. Your blood vessels stiffen slightly for a while. Then, in a healthy person, everything settles back down again. And that is completely normal. Digestion is a controlled disturbance. Your body is unpacking a delivery from the outside world, and some of that delivery is genuinely foreign. A short, sharp response that resolves cleanly is not a problem at all. That is the system working exactly as it was designed to work. The problem starts when the response is too big, or lasts too long, or repeats so often that it never fully switches off again. And here is where it gets strange. The size of that response is largely under your control. It depends almost entirely on what you actually ate. After a fast, that dial is turned way up. Your gut is quiet. Your insulin is on the floor. Your cells are unusually eager for whatever shows up. So why does food trigger an immune reaction at all? Let me give you the mechanism, because once you see it, everything else clicks into place. Your gut is home to trillions of bacteria. Most of them are helpful, but their outer walls are coated in a molecule called lipopolysaccharide. Scientists shorten that to LPS. Your immune system treats LPS as an alarm bell. If it appears in your blood, your body assumes an invasion is happening. And that is a good instinct. That reaction is how you survive a real bacterial infection. The alarm exists for excellent reasons. The catch is that LPS is never supposed to cross out of your gut. It should stay on the far side of a very thin barrier. That barrier is a single layer of cells, coated in mucus, holding the line between the outside world and your bloodstream. It is remarkably thin. And here's the part that stopped researchers cold. Certain meals actually help LPS cross that line, specifically meals that are heavy in saturated fat. When your body absorbs dietary fat, it packages it into tiny transport vehicles called chylomicrons. Small amounts of LPs can hitch a ride on them. They ride the fat out. So you eat, and a few hours later, your blood carries measurably more bacterial debris than it did before. Your immune system spots it, sounds the alarm, and inflammation climbs. Scientists gave this a name far too dramatic for something happening after lunch. They call it metabolic endotoxemia, a tiny, temporary, self-inflicted infection scare, your body preparing for a war that was never actually declared. Sit with that for a second. Your immune system is not really reacting to the food itself. It is reacting to the passengers the food smuggled in. This is exactly why breaking a fast with a greasy pastry and a sweet coffee is such a specific mistake. It is not really about the calories. It is the combination. Refined carbohydrate and saturated fat arriving together on an empty gut with nothing to slow them and nothing to escort them. So does that mean fat is the villain here? No, and honestly, that is the beautiful part of this whole story. The fix is not restriction. The fix is company. The right partners on the plate genuinely change what that fat is able to do inside you. Let me start with the combination that has the strongest and most immediately usable evidence behind it. Protein and fiber, eaten before your starch. There is a whole line of research on something called food order, literally the sequence in which you eat the components of the very same meal. Not different meals, the same meal simply rearranged on the timeline. That is the only variable being changed, which is what makes it so interesting. Participants ate vegetables and protein first. They waited roughly 10 to 15 minutes. Then, and only then, they ate the carbohydrate portion of the meal. Compared to eating the carbohydrate first, their blood sugar rise dropped dramatically. In some small trials, by something in the range of a third to a half. Their insulin response came down too. Same food, same calories, different order. That is wild, and it costs you absolutely nothing to try. So why does it work? 2 reasons, and both are mechanical before they are metabolic. Your stomach is doing most of the heavy lifting here. Protein and fat slow gastric emptying. That means your stomach releases its contents into the small intestine gradually. So sugar trickles in instead of flooding in. Protein also triggers gut hormones, particularly one called GLP-1, which you may have heard about lately for entirely different reasons. GLP-1 tells your pancreas to release insulin more intelligently. It also tells your stomach to slow down. It is a coordinator, calming the whole system. Fiber does something more physical. It forms a gel-like mesh inside your gut that literally gets in the way of rapid sugar absorption. So the practical version is simple. A real protein source plus a genuinely fibrous vegetable eaten first. Your starch arrives afterward, not before. Eggs and greens, then the toast, fish and salad, then the rice, lentils and vegetables, then the bread. That really is the entire technique. And it flattens the single biggest inflammatory trigger in the meal, because a steep glucose spike is itself pro-inflammatory in a way a gentle rise is not. A sharp spike drives oxidative stress inside the walls of your blood vessels. A slow rolling rise simply does not do that to the same degree. But hold on. There is a wrinkle here that most people get completely wrong about fasting, and you should know it before planning your meal. You would assume that after a long fast with insulin at rock bottom, your body would handle sugar beautifully. Insulin sensitivity improves with fasting, right? Over weeks and months, it generally does. But in that immediate window, right after the fast breaks, something quite different is happening inside your muscles. When you have been burning fat, your bloodstream carries plenty of free fatty acids. Your muscle cells have been happily running on them for hours. There is a classic piece of physiology describing how fat fuel and sugar fuel compete with each other inside the cell. They are not equal partners. When a cell is comfortably burning fat, it becomes temporarily less interested in pulling glucose inside. Your muscles effectively say, "Thanks, but I am already full." Which means if you break a long fast with a pile of fast carbohydrate, that sugar can linger in your blood longer than you would expect. The very state that makes fasting valuable is what makes a careless refeed worse. It is a beautiful paradox, and it deserves a moment of attention. The deeper the fast, the more the first meal matters. That is the rule. Longer discipline beforehand demands slightly more thought afterward, not less. Okay, that is combination one. Let me give you the next one, because this one genuinely surprised me the first time I read the research. Fermented foods paired with fiber. Two things people usually treat as interchangeable health advice, when in reality they do completely different jobs inside you. There was a randomized trial where two groups spent 10 weeks either increasing high fiber foods or increasing fermented foods in their diets. Fermented meaning yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and that whole family. Foods where microbes have already done some of the digesting before you ever touch them. The fiber group did fine, but the fermented food group showed something remarkable that caught a lot of researchers off guard. The diversity of their gut bacteria went up, and levels of 19 different inflammatory proteins in their blood went down over those 10 weeks. That included interleukin-6, one of the main markers we track when we talk about chronic, low-grade, background inflammation in the body. Now here is the mechanistic beauty of pairing the two together. Fiber is not really food for you. Fiber is food for your bacteria. When your gut bacteria ferment fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids. The most important one is called butyrate, and butyrate matters enormously. Butyrate is the preferred fuel of the cells lining your colon. Those are the exact cells forming that thin barrier we talked about earlier. Well-fed barrier cells build tighter junctions between themselves. Tighter junctions mean less LPs leaking through into your bloodstream after a meal. Less LPs crossing means less of that post-meal alarm response. So fiber is not just about digestion. It is quietly maintaining a wall. So the fermented food brings in new microbes and their compounds. The fiber feeds the ones already living there, so the wall holds firm. One supplies the workers, the other supplies the bricks. Doing both is not twice as good as one. It is a genuinely different thing. And there is a bonus feature of fiber that I honestly love, because it feels like a cheat code hiding in your kitchen. Certain starches, when you cook them and then cool them, physically restructure. Potatoes, rice, pasta, legumes, they form what is called resistant starch. It resists digestion in your small intestine, so it does not spike your blood sugar much. Instead, it travels down to your colon, and there your bacteria throw a party with it. They ferment it and make more butyrate, feeding the barrier all over again. Cooled rice is not quite the same molecule as hot rice. You changed its metabolic identity by putting it in the fridge overnight. All right, next combination. And this one is about actively shutting inflammation off, rather than simply avoiding switching it on in the first place. Omega-3 fats paired with polyphenols. Concretely, that means fatty fish, walnuts, or ground flax, alongside something deeply colored and plant-based. Berries, extra virgin olive oil, herbs, dark leafy greens, green tea. The bitter, pigmented, strongly flavored end of the plant kingdom. Here is what most people do not realize about inflammation. For decades, we assumed it ended passively, that it simply ran out of steam eventually. It does not. Ending inflammation is an active process carried out by a family of molecules with a wonderfully literal name. They are called specialized pro-resolving mediators. Resolvins, protectins, maresins, your body manufactures them, and it manufactures them out of omega-3 fatty acids. So think of it this way. Inflammation is a fire crew arriving at your house. Loud, disruptive, but absolutely necessary in an emergency. Omega-3s are the signal that tells the crew the fire is out. Good work, everyone. You can pack up and go home now. Without enough of them, the crew keeps spraying water on a house that stopped burning hours ago. That is chronic inflammation in a single sentence. And the polyphenols? Those are the pigments and bitter compounds in plants, the things that make olive oil peppery and green tea astringent. They work mostly by calming a master switch inside your cells called NF-κB. That switch turns on the genes for inflammatory messengers, so polyphenols turn the volume down at the source. Omega-3s clean up afterward. Different jobs entirely, but very clearly on the same team. Extra virgin olive oil deserves a special mention here because it is quietly doing 3 separate jobs at once on your plate. It carries compounds with genuine anti-inflammatory activity. It slows gastric emptying, which flattens the glucose curve of whatever you happen to pour it on, and it dramatically increases how much of the fat-soluble nutrients in your vegetables you actually absorb. This part surprises almost everybody I explain it to. There's research showing that eating a salad with a fat-free dressing means you absorb strikingly little of the carotenoids sitting in that bowl. Those beautiful pigments in your tomatoes and carrots need fat to enter your body at all. They are simply not water-friendly molecules. Eat a naked salad and a lot of the good stuff walks straight past you. The nutrition was there. You just never collected it. Which brings me to a small combination I find genuinely delightful. Turmeric, together with black pepper and some kind of fat. Curcumin is the active compound in turmeric. It is famously anti-inflammatory in a test tube and famously badly absorbed in an actual human being. Your liver grabs it and disposes of it almost immediately. Most of what you swallow never gets a chance to do anything useful, but piperine, the compound in black pepper, temporarily blocks that disposal pathway. Studies have found the amount reaching your bloodstream can rise many times over. Curcumin is also fat-soluble, so it needs oil to travel with. Turmeric stirred into plain water is mostly just a very nice color. Turmeric with pepper in a fatty dish is a completely different proposition. Same spice, same spoonful, radically different amount actually reaching your cells. Now, before you run off and build the perfect plate, wait, there is a catch. Actually, there are a few of them. The first is that transient inflammation after eating is not your enemy. Chasing zero is genuinely the wrong goal here, and it backfires. A little post-meal stress is part of how your body stays adaptable, in the same way that a little exercise stress makes you fitter. What you are managing is magnitude and frequency, not existence. Please do not turn a useful principle into anxiety about every single meal. The second caveat is individual variability, and it is far bigger than most people assume when they read nutrition headlines. Researchers have fed identical meals to large numbers of people while measuring blood sugar and fat responses in detail. The spread between individuals is enormous. Two people, the same muffin, completely different curves. One barely moves, the other spikes hard. Same food, same morning, different bodies. Your gut bacteria shape it. So does your sleep the night before, your recent exercise, and even the time of day you eat. So the principles here are reliable. The exact numbers for you personally are not something anyone can honestly promise you in advance. Third, and this one genuinely matters. If you are doing extended fasts lasting multiple days, the rules change significantly. Reintroducing food after a prolonged fast carries real medical considerations, including rapid shifts in electrolytes like phosphate and potassium, which can become dangerous. That is a conversation for a doctor, not for a video. Everything I am describing here is aimed at ordinary daily eating windows. And a fourth, quieter caveat. A big load of fiber on a gut that has not seen food in 18 hours can be uncomfortable. Your digestive system has been in maintenance mode, sweeping itself clean. Start moderate. Chew properly. Give it a gentle ramp rather than a cliff. So let us land this somewhere genuinely practical, because principles are useless until they turn into something sitting on an actual plate. If I compressed all of this into one meal you could build tonight, here is roughly what it would look like. Start with a real protein source and something genuinely fibrous and green. That combination goes in first, before anything starchy hits your system. That way your gut hormones get the message early, your stomach slows down, and everything arriving afterward is handled more gently. Include a source of omega-3 fat if you can manage it. Fatty fish, walnuts, or ground flax all work perfectly well here. Dress the whole thing in extra virgin olive oil, partly for the polyphenols and partly because it unlocks the nutrients hiding in your vegetables. Add something fermented on the side. A spoonful of sauerkraut or kimchi, a small bowl of yogurt or kefir. It does not need to be much. Season generously with herbs and spices. And if turmeric is going in there, make sure black pepper and some fat go in alongside it. Then, if you want your starch, have your starch. Consider making it a cooled, resistant starch version. And eat it last, not first. Above all, keep saturated fat and refined carbohydrate from arriving together, naked and unaccompanied. That specific pairing on an empty gut drives the biggest response. And drink water. I mean it. Hydration status quietly affects how you handle absolutely everything else on this list, and it is free. That is the whole system. Nothing exotic. Nothing you need to purchase. Just an order of operations and a few thoughtful pairings. And here is the reframe I want to leave you with, because I think it changes how this whole thing feels. We tend to talk about breaking a fast as though it is the ending, the reward at the finish line, the part where discipline stops. But metabolically, it is almost the opposite. The fast is the preparation. It is your body clearing the counter and taking careful inventory, running its repair crews, getting quiet enough to actually listen. All of that quiet work is the setup, not the main event. The meal is where your body responds. That is the loud part. That is the actual conversation you have been building toward all day. Which means that first plate is not a reward for suffering through hours of hunger. It is something considerably more interesting than that. It is the most attentive moment your body will give you all day. You spent hours making your cells listen very carefully indeed. The only question left is what you want to say to them when they finally do. So say something worth hearing.